Welcome back to World of Immersion. Today we are going to be ranking every single ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain in 2024. Now we've released these rankings every single year for the last 3 years, so it is finally time to update it for this year. And boy, have our opinions changed quite a bit, so be sure to stay tuned. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss when we have brand new content. We have tons of content coming out all summer long, so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss when there's a brand new video. But with that being said, let's get right into the video. Alright, so starting off, we have a series of 4 kiddie coasters. These are going to be the bottom 4 out of the 20 coasters in the park. Coming in at number 20 is Magic Flyer. This is by far the smallest coaster in the park. In fact, it is the only coaster on this list that I have not currently been on, because you do need to be below 48 inches in order to ride it, and I unfortunately am not below 48 inches, but it definitely seems like a great ride for the little kids. Coming in at number 19 is Speedy Gonzalez Hot Rod Racers. This is definitely a little bit of a step up from Magic Flyer, and this one I have been able to be on, and it's a decent little family coaster. However, this model is definitely cloned all over the world. Coming in at number 18 is a ride slightly better than Speedy Gonzalez, and that is Canyon Blaster. This is more of an old school family coaster, and honestly it's got some solid pops of airtime for a little kiddie coaster, and that's why it comes in just a little bit higher. And coming in at number 17 is going to be the biggest of the 4 kiddie coasters, that is RoadRunner Express. Honestly, a solid little family coaster. Once again, a ride that is cloned almost everywhere at every other park. But like I said, solid little family coaster with some decent theming. But now let's move on to the actual list of the top 16 major coasters in the park. Alright, and coming in at number 16 is going to be the park's oldest roller coaster, and that is Gold Rusher. Honestly, this is a solid little family coaster. The only reason it's so low on the list is because it's definitely pretty rough, and the layout is not super interesting. But I love how it goes through the forest, it's on top of the mountain, and like I said, it's the oldest coaster in the park, so it's definitely got a lot of history. Coming in at number 15 is a ride that's fallen quite a bit on our rankings from last year's, and that is Revolution. Honestly, this ride is a lot of fun. It's definitely a smooth and solid family coaster. However, there really is no elements that provide any force for me besides the one vertical loop. The vertical loop is great, but that drop into the vertical loop is like a very, very slight ramp down. It's barely even a drop. And like I said, there's not much force on this ride, but don't get me wrong, it's definitely a great coaster, and it's a really fun one for families. Coming in at number 14 is going to be Superman Escape from Krypton, another ride that I still don't feel great about. I think we had this ride a lot lower on the list, and since then I bumped it up just a little bit, but I think it is still one of the most boring coasters at Magic Mountain. The launch is not very forceful at all. You go from 0 to 100 in a very long period of time that it barely feels like a fast launch at all. I do prefer it going backwards. I think you get a much better view from the top facing down. The forward side I think is a lot worse. But like I said, I definitely bumped it up a little bit. I can appreciate what it does, but like I said, it's not my favorite coaster. Coming in at number 13 is going to be Riddler's Revenge. This is the park's stand-up roller coaster. And in general, I'm not a huge fan of stand-up coasters, which is why it comes in so low on this list, but this is definitely one of the better stand-up coasters for sure. It's a very intense coaster. It's got some really huge inversions. This ride, it's just massive in general. And it's a lot of fun. I would prefer it if it was a sit-down coaster. I think it would be a lot higher on this list if it was a sit-down. But like I said, it's still a solid ride, and I find that I don't ride this ride very much. I think I definitely should get a chance to ride on it again, and it could go back up on my rankings a little bit more. But as of now, it sits at number 13. Coming in at number 12 is going to be Ninja, another old classic ride at Magic Mountain. And this is one of the Aero suspended coasters, one of the few left in the world, and this one is a ton of fun. I've been on 2 of these models before, and this is by far my favorite, the other one being Iron Dragon over at Cedar Point. This one's a ton of fun. I love how you start off with a lift and then you go down even further down the mountain. It's a super fast coaster, and honestly, it's pretty intense for a family coaster. I always find it surprising that there's a lift at the end of the ride. I think, everybody always thinks there's going to be another drop after that, but it just takes you back up to the station. But like I said, this ride is great. I love how you go over the water, over Jetstream. The interactions between this ride and Jetstream is really cool. But besides that, it's definitely a little bit of a short ride, so that's why it comes in so low on this list still. Coming in at number 11, just barely missing the top 10, is going to be Scream, the park's B&M floorless roller coaster. Now, I've been on Medusa over at Six Flags Great Adventure, and that ride is a lot better, even with that being a near clone of this ride. But I think that this one is just a lot more rough. There's definitely a much more of a rattle on this one, and it's a pretty forceless ride in my opinion. And on top of that, it's a parking lot coaster, so that's why it comes in so low on this list, even though it's a major thrill ride. But it's definitely still a fun coaster. I would highly encourage you to check it out yourself. because I know some people really love this ride. But like I said, it being a parking lot coaster and having no theming, and with being forceless and a little bit of a rattle, I can't really put it higher on this list in my opinion. Alright, but let's move on to the top 10, and these are really where the rides get really good at Magic Mountain. Alright, and starting off our top 10, at number 10 we have Goliath. This is the park's tallest roller coaster besides Superman, and it is honestly a really good ride. I think I've underrated this ride a lot in the past. I think it's really cool for what it is. However, I still can't put it much higher because of how bad that drop is, in my opinion. It's such a tall ride, it's so fast, and the drop is so forceless. If it was just slightly steeper, you would get so much more airtime on it. And that's really the main thing I think this ride is missing, is airtime. It's super intense with its helixes, but it's really missing that airtime that a lot of other major hypercoasters have. I think that's why I don't love this ride as much, as I'm just comparing it to the other B&M hypers and Intamin hypers that I've been on, and it really just does not compare. However, like I said, it's not a bad ride at all. It's one of the smoothest coasters I think I've ever been on, and the restraints are really open. They're super funky. I feel like they barely touch your lap at all. So if this ride had airtime, it would be insane, but unfortunately it really doesn't. So that's why it comes in at number 10. Coming in at number 9 is a ride that has fallen a little bit in my rankings, and that is West Coast Racers. Now, when this ride first opened, I really loved it, but honestly, the more and more I get to ride it, the more I really just do not like the restraints. The trains and restraints on this coaster are so uncomfortable. They're really tight. I'm only 6 feet tall, so I'm not that super tall, but I can imagine if you're much taller than me, it would be impossible to fit into these restraints. There are really small cars, and not to mention the awful comfort collars that this ride has. The layout is really great. There's some fantastic airtime. It's a very long ride. The launches are really fun, but those trains really hurt the ride in my opinion. If they removed the comfort collars and added on trains that were more similar to an Intamin or Mock Ride's launch coaster trains, I think it would be a much better coaster, feeling a lot more open. But right now, it just feels way too tight getting into those trains, and those shin guards crush your legs. But like I said, it's not a bad ride at all. The layout is incredible. The launches are really fun, and I love the racing aspect. I love that you get to race every single time, no matter what. And it's really cool that it's a Mobius circuit coaster. You get to ride both sides. So that's why it comes in at number 9. And coming in at number 8 is a ride that I really love, and that is Viper. This is a super underrated coaster. It is a ton of fun. It is one of the most intense coasters I think I've ever been on. That first half, you are flying through those inversions. It goes through 3 vertical loops in a row, and the third one is absolutely bonkers. You go right from an insanely fast loop where you get insane intensity right into a giant pop of airtime where you get flung out of your seat. And if you're in the front row, that pop of airtime is some of the best I've ever experienced. And if you're in the back row, that intensity through that inversion is insane as well. Honestly, this ride is just super underrated. It's nowhere near as rough as people make it out to be. And that second half, while it's nowhere near as intense as the first half, has some great hang time on the corkscrews. And I think it's just a super underrated ride. In addition to that, this ride has absolutely no line ever because of how overhated it is. Everybody just hates on this ride because they think it's rough. But honestly, I say go ahead and give it a shot. It's definitely a great coaster. And like I said, super underrated. And coming in at number 7 is another ride that I think is super underrated, and that's Batman the Ride. Now, I have been on multiple versions of this ride, and this is by far my favorite in my opinion. I don't know why, but this one just feels so much more intense and so much smoother. If you sit in the front row of this ride, it is one of the smoothest coasters I think I've ever been on. Those inversions are also so much fun. Those vertical loops are some of my favorites. They're super tight, and the whole ride is super compact, making it one of the most intense coasters I think I've ever been on. It's one of my favorite inverts, and that's saying something based on how old it is and how small of a ride it is. This ride is not very tall at all. You can barely see it when you're walking up to it. And it's just a ton of fun. I highly encourage you to check it out. It's in the back of the park, so you can easily miss it, but it's so much fun. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Full Throttle. This ride is so much fun. The first launch is really fun right out of the station. It's completely unexpected. They always do a really fun gimmick where they count down and they launch you on like 2 or 3. And it's a ton of fun. That first launch is really punchy, and then that vertical loop is amazing. It is huge. You get so much hang time at the top of it. It feels like you're never going to make it through the loop, but you always do, obviously. And then the backwards launch is a ton of fun as well, and that third launch is one of the most intense launches I've been on. It is so much fun. That top hat gives some great airtime. My only complaint with this ride is how short it is. It really ends right after that drop. It's so annoying. The brakes are even on the drop itself, so you don't even fully get to experience that drop. But like I said, all those other things make this ride so much better. So that's why it comes in at number 6. Now we finally made it to the top 5. And I feel like everybody's got a very similar top 5. However, it's really the order that you put them in. So let's start off with number 5. And coming in at number 5 is the park's one and only wooden coaster. That is Apocalypse. Another super underrated coaster. One of my favorite wooden coasters I've been on, and I've been on some incredible wooden coasters with the likes of Ghost Rider and El Toro, and this is up there. Obviously not better than those two, but it's a ton of fun as well. Super intense wooden coaster. You really feel the speed on this ride. It feels like it never lets down the speed. It's honestly not that fast, but it feels super fast. The trains are super comfortable. The restraints are just a little uncomfortable where they dig into your thighs just a little bit, but honestly, it's really easy to look past that. This ride is just so much fun. It's got some great airtime for a wooden coaster. And also one of those rides that really gets a line because it's in the back of the park. People look at it and they think it's a wooden coaster, so they don't ride it. The general public doesn't really love this ride because they think it's rough, but I think it's a ton of fun. It's one of my favorite coasters at the park, and I highly encourage you to check it out, especially if you're a fan of wooden coasters. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Wonder Woman Flight of Courage, the park's newest roller coaster, and it is a ton of fun. I believe I ranked this higher last year. And while I still love this ride, it has unfortunately gotten a little bit of a rattle to it. And they no longer run 3 trains on it. At least as of the last time I was there, they've only been running 2, so that line moves a lot slower. The 3 trains would be great because then there's continuously a car loading in the station with its Omnimover station. But looking past those things, it's still a fantastic layout. In the back row, that drop is incredible. The inversions are a ton of fun. It's a solidly long ride. And it's just one of those coasters that's just pure fun. It's not super intense. It doesn't have the craziest elements, but it's just a fun coaster to ride. I do wish, however, it didn't have the comfort collars. They're kind of annoying to deal with, and sometimes you can bang your neck a little bit into them. But besides that, it's a great coaster, and there's really not much else I would change about it. And coming in at number 3 is one of the most intense coasters I've been on, and that is Tatsu. This ride has probably the most insane inversion I've ever been on with its massive pretzel loop. One of the most intense inversions I've ever experienced ever. And while this isn't my favorite flying coaster of all time, that honor belongs to Flying Dinosaur over at Universal Studios Japan. It is still one of my favorite coasters I've ever been on. And I would highly encourage you to check it out if you're at Magic Mountain. It is also one of the coasters with the best view in the world. You're up on top of a mountain already when you start, and then you go up even further, so you're staring down at the ground so high up in the air, and you just twist and turn well above the park. You go over the edges of the cliffs, so you are so high up over the ground, and because it's a flying coaster, you're staring right down at that ground. It is so cool. Besides the pretzel loop, the other versions don't stand out a ton to me, but there is one massive overbank curve over the edge of the park that is incredible. You get such a great view of the back of the park. And I would encourage you to check out this ride just for the views alone. If you get a chance to ride it at night too, it is an out-of-this-world experience. I would definitely get a chance to check it out if you can. And coming in at number 2, fittingly, is going to be X2. This is also one of the most intense coasters I've ever been on, if not the most intense. It is an absolutely insane ride that is the only one of its kind in North America. It's got an absolutely demonic drop where you twist facing the ground upside down and you're going face first vertically down to the ground, only at the last second to flip so you're not facing the ground anymore. It is crazy. You're going through inversions while flipping. And while this ride is slightly rougher, if you do sit on the inside seat, especially towards the front row, it's not going to feel rough at all. The restraints are a little funky, but it's really easy to look past that and just look at how insane of a ride it is. An absolutely crazy ride. It is crazy that this ride is over 20 years old to me. It feels like a brand new coaster with how innovative it is. And when the fire and the onboard audio works, it really just makes it so much better. This is one of my favorite coasters ever, and you have to come check it out at Magic Mountain if you get a chance. It is unlike anything else in North America, and that's why Magic Mountain is really such a well-known park, is almost because of this coaster specifically. But coming in at number 1, this has been my number 1 at the park for a long time, and that is Twisted Colossus, the park's dueling hybrid RMC roller coaster. And this ride is so incredible, one of my favorite coasters of all time. It is such a smooth coaster. It still runs incredibly well for being almost 9 years old at this point. And it's got incredible first 2 drops. That's right, you go on this drop twice because it's a dueling coaster. You go on both sides of it. And when this ride does actually duel, when the operations are great, it just makes it so much better. You're going through those inversions, twisting over the other car. The interactions with the other car are incredible. But even without that, the layout is a ton of fun. It's got some incredible pops of airtime. The inversions are really, really fun. That 0G stall is great. And the high five element is a lot of fun as well. But overall, it's just an incredible coaster, one of my favorites, and I would highly recommend checking it out when you get a chance to visit Magic Mountain. But that's going to do it for our ranking of all 20 roller coasters at Six Flags Magic Mountain in 2024. Be sure to comment down below your opinions, how you would rank these rides if you agree or disagree. as well as if your favorite coaster made the #1 spot. Thank you so much for watching World of Immersion today. Be sure to check out all of our other videos on the channel. If you're curious about our other rankings from previous years, the link is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching World of Immersion, and we'll catch you in the next video.